Embers of Hope by Neon Zangetsu, Chapter 7, Mirrors. Mirror, mirror on the wall, tell me who is the loneliest of them all. Winter. Mirror. Are you alright? Quick, how many fingers am I holding up? 5, Yang. Ruby blew out a sigh. Well, how about now? The girl twitched. Still 5. Salem didn't laugh at the plight of little Ruby Rose as she reclined on her throne. No, certainly not. That would have been cruel of her. And she was anything but. Still, she didn't intervene on Ruby's behalf either. Why should she? There was something decidedly charming about watching the girl's sister. Or were they cousins? Bah, so confusing. These bloodlines. Continuing to fuss over her like a fine china doll. It almost reminded her of her first family, an age before. In a better time, a happier time. Before the darkness. Before. Her right hand dug into the armrest, tearing bloody furrows into the stone as she fought down a destructive impulse. Damn the gods! Would they take this away from her too? Would they shatter her happiness as they had once before? Would they? A tan hand laid itself over her own, causing her anger to shrivel and die. I missed them too. Ospen, he would forever be Ozma to her, breathed into her ear. It's hard, she admitted, watching the children below her. When I see them, I can't help but think of ours. Naruto is lovely, as his friends, but his lips brushed the outer lobe of her ear, and she sucked in a rare breath of surprise. Then we'll have more. Salem hadn't been stricken speechless for thousands of years. She was absolutely mute now. Excuse me. For a fleeting instant, she almost felt human again. What was that? Ozma chuckled and leaned close to whisper into her ear. Well, I was thinking. The Queen of the Grim did not flush as her ex-husband threaded his fingers within hers and began to murmur sweet nothings to her. She was far, far above such temptation. She was terror. She was vision. She was vicious. She was fear incarnate. Anyone who said otherwise was a liar, a cur, and a filthy, good-for-nothing traitor. Anyone who saw her toes curl up surely spied the propaganda against her. Still, Salem didn't trust herself to words for a moment. She settled for leaning her head against his shoulder instead. Thank you, she hummed, for listening to me earlier. Of course, a soft chuckle greeted her ears. How could I not? You were in quite the panic when you called me. Salem's face burned as she slammed an elbow into his side. You will tell no one of that, not a word. The headmaster grunted. I swear, one of these days you're going to break me. She granted him a lascivious grin. You could always use a younger model. That was the expression she was looking for. Vengeance was hers. Ruby's incident couldn't be kept secret, of course, no matter how much she might have wanted it to remain such in the beginning. Initially, she'd wanted to hold off until Ruby and Winter could master themselves, but in the end, it just hadn't been feasible. It would take years to gain the fine level of control she possessed. No, Salem had endured all of 3 days before breaking the news to him. In turn, Ozma waited 3 more days before he revealed the truth to the others. Only those he could trust. Those who wouldn't panic, not like that Ironwood fellow. He would have an urnism if he saw this, and they might even face an invasion. If the world thought she was trying to taint humanity into something monstrous, well, that might be enough to unite them against her. Once, Salem might have scoffed at such a thing. Now, an incursion was the last thing she wanted. Yang! Ruby whined, drawing her attention. Not the face. That horse. Well, you're definitely not an imposter, that's for sure. Did you have to pinch me so hard? Yep. Red eyes drifted back to the girls as they began to wrestle with one another. Was it wrong that she considered them hers? Ruby may as well be, now that she'd been corrupted. Or had she, by the pull of darkness? Yang was another matter, one she still debated on. Even after all this time, Salem found herself wondering if she couldn't just recruit the girl properly. Would her son like that? Such a shame about the sneak girl, though. Not the older one. She was a keeper, but Salem was beginning to think the younger sister was something of a lost cause. Weist had all but begged to go home after Ruby's transformation, and magnetism host that she was. She'd granted it, if only to make a point. Perhaps she would yet return once she came to her senses. Bah, she'd send Raven to check on her in a month or so to ensure that happened. By contrast, Winter's fate had proven considerably less kind. Jackersnee had taken one look at his eldest daughter and tried to have her killed. Killed his own daughter. He'd called her tainted and seized his guards on her. Raven had been forced to drag Winter back through the portal to ensure her safety. Upon her return, Winter had sealed herself into one of the tower bedroom and not emerged since. Salem had kept the sullen sword woman on retainer since. At least the resident kitten hadn't bolted. She'd taken what victory she could today. Raven scowled at her from across the room. Salem bequeathed her a cold smile, and those red eyes snapped away immediately. Please stop antagonizing her. Ozma tapped her shoulder in mild admonishment. You'll make an enemy of her at this rate. That's the last thing we need. I disagree, dear husband. Salem couldn't quite keep the smile from her face. At the end of the day, Raven's too much of a coward to ever raise her hands against us. Honestly, a part of her regretted not recruiting Raven earlier. In the right hands, the woman's semblance was absolutely overpowered. Toss Raven in a room with a few strangers, force her to bond with them, and bam, you had yourself a glorified fast travel system spanning the kingdoms. Better yet, she was a coward, and cowards, as Salem well knew, were predictable. So long as she remained immortal, Raven wouldn't dare raise her blade against her. A single look at Yang now ensured her silence, made certain that she continued to toe the line and didn't get any ideas. Her life had simply turned around, hadn't it? Once, she would have balked at letting Ozma back into her life. He'd hurt her. No amount of apologies or gifts could ever truly change what had happened between them. Yet, that rift had begun to heal. There were times when she almost felt as if she could forgive him. Yet, everyone seemed to be taking this remarkably well. Ah! Oh, joy! Summer had finally awoken. Ozma exhaled softly. And so it begins again. Allow me to deal with her. You've clearly failed in that regard. Summer sat up, took another long look at her daughter, and screamed yet again. Little Ruby wilted, even as Yang grimaced and looked away. Salem dug a finger into her ear, in a vain effort to make everything stop ringing. To no avail. Never mind those silver eyes. The girl's very voice was a weapon. Just how loud could she be? When the silence finally came, it was a blessing thing indeed. Are you quite done? She sighed. Or do you intend to faint yet again? The floor is quite cold, I've been told. To her credit, Summer did not scream this time. She absolutely shrieked instead. What have you done to my baby? Not a thing. Salem continued to lounge in her chair, refusing to flinch when those ghastly eyes flashed. What you see here before you is simply the result of a happy accident. Accident? Happy? The silver-eyed warrior, throated froth at the mouth as she climbed to her feet. How can you possibly say that? Ozma muttered something about poorly timed words, while Summer howled at her. Salem ignored them both. How can I not? The children were playing near the grim pools when a quake hit. Little Rose here, she gestured to the still squirming Ruby, was unfortunate enough to fall in, but she was quickly fished out by my son and his friends, one of whom risked her very being harm to help her. No lasting harm was done. Isn't that right, my dear? The little one nodded. I'm fine, Mom. Really, better than fine, actually. See what? Yang's words trailed off in a shriek as Ruby bodily lifted her from the floor. The blonde squawked and Ruby grinned up at her, the very picture of innocence. By the gods, Ozma muttered, watching her put the taller girl down. That might be a problem going forward. You see, Salem hummed appreciatively, even as Summer's spirit seemed to sink. She's still very much herself, despite what you think. And if she knew what was good for her, she'd leave it at that. Appearances and impulses aside, this is still your daughter. Nothing has changed. I will help find a remedy for this, of course. A lie that. There was no such remedy, no miracle cure. She knew. She searched for one in ages past, but Summer need not know that. What is even scouring the archives for any such happenings? Perhaps it might be possible for the child to control the change, to revert at will. Naruto certainly could, but that could be unique to him for all she knew. Given time, Ruby and Winter might yet attain some appearance of humanity, or they might worsen and become feral. There was no way of knowing. Only time would tell. We don't know. We don't need your help. As if sending that very thought, Summer's face turned storming. We're leaving. She snatched Ruby by the wrist. Let's go, Ruby. You too, Yang. Ah, but Mom, Ruby cried. No buts. We're going. Raven, portal, now. Raven suddenly pushed herself off the wall and drew her blade with a languished rasp of steel. Salem allowed the former bandit her defiance, even as Ozma tried to convince Summer to stay. He would fail, of course, just as she knew he would. The wrath of an angry mother was a truly terrifying thing indeed. She knew it better than most. She counted herself lucky that Crow and Tai were away on a mission. Having the father's present might well make this difficult, but here they were not, and so they were powerless to stop what followed. You may leave if you wish, she called out after them when, but you intend to return? What do you think? I think we should ask what the children want. Salem couldn't quite keep a smile from her face. Ozma saw it and frowned, but was helpless to intervene this time. Should they not have a say? And you, daughter? Raven saw the bait for what it was and placed her part marvelously. Her head whipped towards Yang. What is your choice? Me. The blonde blinked, startled. Then she wailed, Can I stay for a bit? I'd like to see Naruto again. It's been a while. Will you be careful? Those blood-red eyes left hers. Who do you think I am? Ruby? Hey! All eyes fell to the girl in question. Salem looked down to find her ward gazing up at her. I want to stay, Ruby whispered, kicking one boot against the other. Scarlet orbs flickered back to silver for the merest of moments. You'll teach me to control myself, right? So I won't be angry. I won't feel like breaking things all the time. And she choked on some tiny emotion. I'll be able to change back. Of course, dear girl, Salem cooed. I give you my word, and she would. She'd teach her everything she could and more. Ruby had no idea of the potential she held, a girl with silver eyes, now blessed by the power of darkness. Whether she knew it or not, Ruby Rose bore the twin aspects of the brother gods, properly trained and taught to use her powers. She would become something grand, as if she let her waste her gifts. Out of the question, Summer snarled. Osmond, make her listen. Yes, Ozma, Salem countered. Make this foolish little wrench see wisdom here. Caught between a rock and a hard place, her fellow immortal tried to be diplomatic. He really did. Perhaps we're all being a bit rash here. Ozma. He failed utterly. For a moment there, Salem genuinely considered letting Summer and the children go. She decided against it. No, that wouldn't do. Naruto would be devastated if Ruby was taken away in the middle of the night like this. Never mind young Yang, whom he'd undoubtedly be happy to see again after so long. For her son's smile to be denied over so simple a misunderstanding as this. Why, that was simply unacceptable. It was her solemn and sacred duty as a mother to ensure his happiness, even if he had yet to realize it. Which meant it was time to remind Summer Rose precisely who she was dealing with. She was no fickle mother to be bullied and cowed by an angry huntress. She was the queen of the grim. Raven, she said, her voice anew, causing the swordsman to Swordmaster to stiffen. Make no mistake, if you open that portal for Summer, you will die. Yang spun around. What? Raven's sword slammed back into her sheath with an audible click. Summer jerked back as if she'd been slapped. What are you doing? Sorry, Summer, the pale woman shrugged. Nothing personal. I like living. Summer only just now realized her peril, made for the door instead. Salem waved a hand and it slammed in her face with a resounding bang, denying her the sanctum she sought. Trapped in the throne room with Raven at her back, the silver-eyed warrior spun and pushed the children behind her. For a fleeting sliver of a second, she was distracted. Ruby took that brief nanosecond of distraction to break her mother's grip on her wrist and bolt. With her enchanted strength, it proved pitifully easy for the girl to escape. In the cloud of red petals, said girl lunged into Salem's open arms. The Queen of the Grim was all too happy to sweep the girl to what she no doubt saw as safety. From there, she sat back down and laid Ruby down in her lap. That in turn caused Yang to chase after Ruby, leaving Summer alone before the days with nothing but her weapon. She didn't dare draw it. Salem took a moment to savor her heartbroken expression before mastering herself. She had known this would happen, of course. She'd orchestrated this very outcome. Ruby, sweetie, Summer's voice broke in distress. What are you doing? Get away from her. No, Ruby buried her head in Salem's robe. I won't go. Do you see now? Salem purred. She doesn't wish to leave. Of course she doesn't. Summer made angry summer noises. You tricked her. Have I? Salem looked left. Salem looked right. Whatever do you mean? She looked down. Have I tricked you, Ruby? Nope. The girl looked anguished by her mother's behavior, but in this alone she held firm. You didn't say anything you didn't mean. You see, I speak only in truth. Salem, Osmond warned, finally finding his voice again. Whatever you're thinking right now, don't. Just don't. Why ever not? Pale brow rose. And who are you to claim you know my mind, dear Ozma? Make no mistake. Summer is here on sufferance. Her words echoed through the hollow chamber, devoid of warmth. She has ever been here because I allowed it. I will not push two children apart because a misguided mother's wishes it. Yang scratched at her cheek. She's kinda got you there. Ozma slapped the palm to his forehead. He knew her well enough to guess what was coming. Summer had made her bed, and now she'd have to lie in it. Ruby latched on tighter to Salem's arm. Summer shouted something, and the words buzzed in her ear like an endless animal bleat. How she longed to silence her, but she wouldn't, if only to make a point. You misunderstand me, Miss Rose. Instead, she rose slowly, almost regally from her throne. When I told you I would help your daughter, I was not making an offer. She lowered her voice and picked up her word, and as she descended the dais, eyes flashed in the gloom. I made a promise. She placed Ruby down, but the girl never strayed from her side. Oh, how that made Summer squirm. She will stay here as my guest until she learns to control herself. As will Willow Schnee. You're welcome to visit as you wish. You may even stay if you like. Ruby's face lit up. Her mother, however, balked. Over my dead body. Salem pretended to consider her words. I have no desire to kill you, but if that is what you wish. Yang and Ruby squawked. Ozma, ever the hero, pushed himself out of his chair. I assure you, Salem made a smile at them all. I'm afraid you don't have much experience with humor these days. Blast, she would have rather liked an excuse to slay this bothersome gnat. Summer's death would only galvanize little Ruby against her, however. She couldn't have that. Her son was fond of the little Hellion. She couldn't force them to obey, but that would have run counter to Naruto's wishes. If he returned to find that she had slaughtered Summer, he would be horribly cross with her. Restraint it was then. The things we do for those we love. Furthermore, if your daughter goes out into the world as she is now, she will die. If reason would not sway Summer Rose, emotion would. Ruby turned bone white, given her current complexion. That was quite a feat. Sure enough, Summer stopped dead in her tracks. What? She will be as much danger to herself as others. Summer's face twitched anew, and so too did Salem, twisting the knife in her argument. She knows nothing of her new abilities. She will either lose control or the Grim will flock to her. Regardless, she will be discovered, hunted for what she has become. The huntress made a keening sound and tried to deny her, but she'd have none of it. That discovery will lead back to me and my son. I fear nothing. But Naruto will be at risk through no fault of his own. You are a mother, are you not? Tell me, what would you do to protect your child? Summer stepped to her without hesitation. I'd do anything to keep Ruby safe. She's my daughter. I'd gladly give my right arm for her. Salem nearly hissed in triumph. Would you kill for her? She challenged, leaning forward to press her forehead against Summer's, even if it meant making yourself an enemy of the world. Summer squirmed like a struck pig. I'm not. You can't just. That's not fair. Not fair. What did she know of fairness? Despite her best efforts to restrain them, Salem felt her emotions slip the leash. You dare speak to me of fairness? Sure. Foolishly, Summer stood her ground and continued to butt heads with her. You're just a spoiled brat ordering others around. What gives you the right? A finger stabbed against her nose. You haven't lost anything. Salem twitched. Osmond winced. Oh dear. Somewhere behind him, one of the many glass windows overlooking the Grimlands cracked. Salem barely heard it. Her world had gone red, and a curious buzzing rose in her ears all over again. She waved her fingers, and the doors burst open anew. Summer didn't dare make a move towards that empty arch. Her wide silver eyes remained fixed on Salem, as well they should. Ozma. When the Queen of the Grim next spoke, her words were a naked hiss. I believe the children are bored. It was a statement, not a question. Take them outside to play. Raven will accompany you. We're fine, though. Another window began to crack. Are they gonna fight? Can we watch? Hey! Ruby and Yang tried to protest further. They really, truly did. The adults hustled them out of the doors before they could put up a fight. Salem waved her hand again, and the doors crashed shut once more behind them, nearly flying free from their hinges. Salem counted slowly as their footfalls receded rapidly in the distance. 5, 10, 15, 20. Only then did she deign to face Summer Rose. It didn't bother her, Salem told herself. The girl was just juvenile. It didn't bother her. She didn't know the truth. It didn't bother her. It wasn't her fault. It didn't bother her. No, not at all. Not in the least. She was calm. She was the eye of the storm. She was at peace. She wasn't about to let this slip of a girl ruin her day, because didn't bother her. And I twitched. It did bother her. It bothered her a lot. Fall! A wave of crushing presence slammed down on Summer's shoulders, freezing her in place. A dozen shadowy hands burst from the floor and dragged her down to her hands and knees before she could react, leaving the startled hunters all but paralyzed, gasping for air that refused to come. They lashed onto her face, onto her arms, her legs, everywhere they could grasp. Silver eyes bulged and flashed wildly, to no avail. For every ebony tether she dissolved, a dozen more took its place to hold her fast. Life's not fair, is it, my little huntress? Salem began to circle her in slow, measured strides, like a pale panther. If I were fair, I would be lying on the ground, and you would be standing over me. Summer raised an eye to glower at her. But while some are born to feast, others spend their lives in the dark, begging for scraps. Really, it was like talking to a naughty child. Summer had proven herself incapable of acting her age, and so she would be treated like the child she was. The way I see it, you and I are exactly the same. No, Salem tilted her head when the prone woman snarled at her through her gag. We both want what's best for our children. We each seek a way to give them good lives, normal lives, but our children aren't normal, are they? She paused and placed her palm under the woman's head, forcing her head up. And you say that's not fair? A hand fell away from Summer's mouth, and she rasped out a quick reply before another could form. Because it isn't. Life isn't fair. There was nothing false about the bite in Salem's voice now, and finally Summer cowered before the full weight of her fury. I know this more than anyone living or dead. I have suffered more than you can possibly imagine at the hands of gods and men alike, and you would speak to me of fairness. No! She slashed her hand through the air when the little churl dared open her mouth again. The world isn't fair. They would see me and mine burn because they deem it necessary, because we go against their truth, their precious order, because we upset the balance. Summer choked wordlessly. Salem pressed in, driving the smaller woman into the floor. They would slay your daughter too, without a second thought. She all but howled the words, drag her out into the street, and lop her head off, all for an accident not of her making. Her death would be celebrated, just like my son's, and you would allow this? You would call that fair? No, I can't hear you. No, Summer rasped, it's not fair. Then you understand? With a supreme effort of will, Salem reined her wrath in and leaned back. As a mother, I cannot allow this. If I let your child run wild, she will endanger us all. Summer didn't move. The grim hands wouldn't allow it. Reluctantly, Salem unbounded her, and the young woman rocketed upright. There was no arrogance to be seen in those silver eyes. She was beaten, cowed. For all of her talk of justice and heroism, she wasn't willing to throw Ruby to the masses, which was good. If she'd done that, then Salem knew she would have had to kill her. Any mother willing to sacrifice their children was no mother at all. You're doing this to help yourself, not him. Believe what you will. I will do what I must. Silly girl, she still failed to comprehend the truth. Salem loved 5 people in this god-forsaken world, and thought that number slowly grew with each year. Summer Rose could not hope to count herself among those lofty few. She never would, but now they held an understanding between them, as mothers, if nothing else. Now leave me be. Summer bolted. Salem smirked. Good girl. A thought occurred to her, and she blinked. Now where the devil has my son run off to this time? How long has she been in there? Days at least. Blake's report proved uncharacteristically short, clipped even. She's been refusing food and drink, just like I did. Talk about deja vu. Naruto ran a hand through his hair as he considered the looming door before them. What was with people and hunger strikes? Hers was the second one this month. I knew she wasn't feeling well after she went back to her old man. Still, he tried to bite back the bitter surge of anger that followed, and failed spectacularly. That what kind of father threw his daughter away like this? If Raven hadn't intervened, Winter wouldn't be alive to soak at all. She'd be dead. His eyes flashed at the thought in the dim light. Dead, and for what? To satisfy the vanity of Jackie Schnee. Even now, he was probably pouring poison in Weiss's ear, corrupting her, turning her against her now exiled sister. Maybe it was time someone fed that impudent little dust merchant a slice of humble pie. Perhaps he should choke on it. Are you sure about this? Blake asked him. Nope, he blew out a breath. Not at all, Blake, not at all. Thanks for bringing this to my attention. Does it really matter, though? Naruto turned to face him. Of course it matters. She's my friend. Our friend. The little fawness wrinkled her nose at him. But she's a Snee. How can you stand her? Naruto blinked. Racism from Blake. He'd not expected that. Most faunists had a contentious relationship with the SDC at best, outright antagonistic at the worst, but her behavior still stung in the worst of ways. Now wasn't the time to let their differences divide them. Now was the time for unity. Why couldn't she see that? Blake, the smaller girl, wilted. All right. Everyone had reacted to the incident differently. Weiss had run away in fear. Winter had withdrawn into herself. Ruby had resolved herself to make the best of her new situation. Blake had gone and become his shadow seemingly overnight. He wasn't sure if that was a good thing. The shock hadn't shattered her as he'd feared. Instead, it had driven her closer to him. She didn't so much follow him as she did stalk his every step, not out of any sentiment or some such. She had simply deemed him the safest person to latch onto in this madness. She wasn't wrong, really. Dad tried his best, but he'd lived too many lifetimes. Big Sis was rarely home, ever away on missions. Uncle Tyrion was cracked in the head. Uncle Watts could be a rightful selfish prick at the best of times. Uncle Hazel wasn't dangerous, but he'd been grouchy ever since Salem allowed Ozma back into the tower. With Weiss ferried back to Atlas for the time being, Winter changed, and Ruby a hotly contested topic. It was a cold day in hell when he was the sane one here. Could you wait outside? Blake nodded. Stealing himself, Naruto stepped to the door and thumbed his fist against it twice. Hey, Winter, he called, plastering a smile on his face. Do you want to build a snowman? A muffled thump answered him from the other side of the door. Go away, Naruto. I want to be left alone. Naruto cocked his head and pretended to consider her words. Gee, let me think about... Nope! His foot slammed into the door and blew it clean off its hinges, sending it shrinking into Winter's room. A yep echoed from the darkness. What are you doing? Get out! Naruto strode in, heedless of her shout. Somewhere behind him he heard Blake sigh. Might as well give up, Schnee. He'll drag you out of there, one way or another, just like he did me. Well, she wasn't wrong. Naruto didn't raise his voice, didn't even speak as he shuffled forward into the dark. This time, he didn't have the benefit of a lantern, and even his keen eyes could only see so much in such shadow. He reached for a light switch, slapping his palm against the wall where he knew the panel would be. Nothing happened. Really, he called into the dark. You cut the lights? Go away. Winter's voice rasped from the southern corner of the room. Naruto turned towards it. You know I can't do that, Winter, and I don't think you want me to. You don't know anything about me. I know that you're my friend. He spread his arms out to show himself unarmed. Whatever your old man said, whatever he did, he was wrong. We can fix this. Just let me help. His sixth sense shrieked a warning, and Blake cried out as a swarm of birds burst from the dark to assail him. Naruto flung up his arm before his face and weathered them in stoic silence. A dozen stinging impacts slapped against his forearms and chest. He hadn't expected Winter to use her semblance on him. Wait, something was wrong here. A palm flashed out and caught one of the birds in his dominant hand. Sure enough, Juvenile nevermore squawked up at him. Naruto swore softly and released his prey as a fresh flock dove at him. A pit of dread opened up in his stomach as another feathery blur bounced off his head. He grit his teeth and blinked a bit of blood away from his right eye. This wasn't her semblance. She'd actually summoned a swarm of Grimm. She shouldn't be able to do that. Cease! He laced the word with a touch of his mother's influence, and countless tiny birds slammed into one another in their haste to avoid slamming into their liege lord. When it came to Grimm, his word was second only to Salem herself. Whatever had happened to Winter, she wasn't strong enough to override his commands. A few indignant chirps greeted him as he wrestled control of Nevermore from her. Nothing more. Shoo! He waved his hand, and they raced out into the corridor behind him, eliciting a cry of alarm from Blake, but little more. Once he was certain they were gone, Naruto swiveled his head back to search for Winter. No attack came. Come on, Winter. He dared 3 steps forward as his voice regained its normal tremble. This isn't like you. Tell me what's wrong. What's wrong? Her voice laced at him with the dark and cracked, abandoning all pretense of composure. You're what's wrong? This is all your fault. I trusted you. You said it would be all right. You lied. When the glyphs burst before him, Naruto was ready for it. He rode the momentum and let it ram him back against the wall. It didn't hurt. Rather, it felt like Winter was trying to push him away from her. She didn't want to be near him. Didn't want to be seen. She just wanted to drive him off. He had a sinking suspicion he knew why. This close, he could taste Winter's negativity like a physical force. It felt almost alive, rolling off her like a black cloud, strong enough to make him sick. His grim side drank it in and howled for more. Pain, misery, hatred, and desire. More. That made Naruto feel even more ill. She was going to drive every Grim mad at this rate, himself included. I'm sorry for this. Blake, Winter, cover your ears. He plucked a small metal cylinder from his belt and flung it at the floor. Arthur's gadget did its job and more. The flashbang struck the stone and burst into light. Winter cried out in pain, and Naruto pounced, slapping a second device against the nearby wall. This one didn't explode, rather, it bathed the room in gentle golden light. Naruto touched a dial in the center, and that flowing light spread to the four corners of the room, banishing the shadows. There was nowhere left to hide. A dark shape skittered back from him, one hand held before their face. No, Winter wailed. Don't look at me. Nope. Naruto bowled in close. Why are you wearing a scarf? Go away! She wailed at him, and he caught her right arm. Dark fingernails bit into his skin and drew blood. Naruto nearly recoiled with hiss, but held fast. She hadn't meant to hurt him. He knew that now. It wasn't her fault. No, not her fault at all. She simply lost control of herself. She knew it too. It's going to be all right, he spoke calmly and clearly to her, ignoring the blood dribbling down his right arm. Everything's going to be all right. I'm not going to leave you alone. Not like this. Winter hung her head and didn't dare look at him. That was all right. Naruto didn't much mind. He could see her just fine now. Her hair was done, and her pale face gone filthy, smudged with dirt. It made her look even more pallid than usual. They both knew why. Why did you lock yourself up in here? He sat down beside her, folding his legs beneath him. An awkward silence pushed itself between the two children. Father said I was tainted, Winter finally rasped. He took Weiss back, but said I was unworthy of the Schnee name. Naruto bristled, words dying on his tongue, smiles shriveling on his face. You're not, he argued. I am. Winter whimpered and buried her head in her knees, determined to hide her face from him. I'm afraid too. You'll hate me. Afraid of what? Why, what are you talking about? Naruto tried to laugh, but it sounded hoarse even to him. I could never. Oh, Winter raised her gaze. Naruto sucked in a sharp breath through his teeth. Mismatching eyes of mismatched eyes of tainted scarlet, and nice sapphire met his eyes. Of becoming her. As she looked on, Winter rolled up her sleeve, and when he only blinked, her face contorted to a snarl. Of this, she tore off her pale scarf in a fit of pique. Bits of fabric flew through the air as her dark hair shredded the cloth. Then her blouse beneath revealing herself to him, and quite suddenly, not to realize why she'd been wearing the scarf. Can't you see? She whimpered the words. It didn't stop with my arm. It's spreading, and it was. Only a few days ago, the change had ended well below Winter's elbow. It had spread since he'd seen her last. Now it crept across her pale skin, into her neck, and through half her face. One eye had gone scarlet on that side, stained with bloody darkness. Her snow-white hair slowly turned the color of ash. He could see veins of vermilion threading their way across gray skin. A lone horn of white bone jutted from the center of her forehead, not large, not yet, but noticeable all the same. He suspected another would grow beside the other given time. Naruto thought she looked lovely. Winter certainly didn't. I'm changing, she babbled. Whatever happened to me in the pool, it's getting worse. I can see that. It was all Naruto could muster without sounding rude, and it set her right off again. How kind of you to notice. Winter balled up the scarf at her feet and lobbed it at him. Naruto let it hit him in the face, unblinking as it fluttered the floor. All the while, his mind whirled. Winter was always the calm one, ever a bastion of icy serenity and stern stoicism. She never panicked, never cried, never had an outburst. They were of an age, and yet she always seemed so much older somehow. Not so much now. All that calm was gone, shattered by despair. Fear had shattered her facade, and her father's rejection of her very being had driven her into a dark place. It hurt to see her like this. He wanted to help her, wanted to fix it, but he didn't know how, and so Winter continued to cry. He said, "I'm dead to him," she bawled. "My daughter is dead. That's what he said." Her hands tore at her hair. He told them to shoot me, and they did. If Raven hadn't been there, you have to help me. Teary eyes rounded on him, and she grabbed at his jacket. "Fix this, please. I beg of you." Naruto flinched. "I can't." She burst into tears all over again. "I don't want to change. I don't want to feel like this. I want to be me, Winter Schnee, not a monster." With those words, something clicked in the back of Naruto's head. Comprehension flooded in his mind. And you will be." She glared bloody red daggers at him. "What makes you say that?" "Not much," Naruto reasoned as he bridged the gap between them with one hand. "Just a feeling." If Ruby was still herself after an extended dip in the pool, he believed Winter, who had only been minimally exposed, had a chance. A slim chance, but a chance nonetheless. She was only a mess now thanks to her rat bastard of a father. Her negativity caused her condition to worsen. It all made a twisted sort of sense. "Tell me," he began slowly, "do you miss Weiss?" Winter's head bobbed in a fitful nod. "More than anything, it's not fair. She should be here. Then we'll get her back." That was a promise he intended to keep. "We will." There it was, an opening. Hope Naruto pounced on it. "Of course we will." He dared to take her hand into his own. "Do you want me to leave?" "No." Winter's hand. "Do you want to leave?" "No." Winter's hand squeezed his. "Please stay. I misspoke earlier. I was angry. This isn't your fault. You've been nothing but polite to me." Her eyes widened when she saw his arm, and realization dawned. "I attacked you." "You did. I forgive you." Naruto flashed her a smile despite the throbbing pain in his bicep. "I barely even felt it." Winter balked at the rent she tore in his arm. "You're bleeding, and I'll heal. I don't break easy, remember? So, how do you feel now?" "Lost." Her brow darkened. "Confused. Angry." Her eyes flitted to her hands. "Happy." "Then you're still you, silly." Naruto laughed as he pulled the clean cloth from his jacket pocket and began to clean her filthy face with quick, brisk strokes. "You're Winter Schnee. You're my friend. No one can take that away from you, no matter what you look like." Winter sniffled again, and he could see his words were having an effect on her. However muted it might be, he could feel her regaining her composure. Better yet, the horn on her forehead had been growing progressively smaller as they chatted. She just needed one more push. "You must think me a fool." "Nah." He waved a hand as he pulled the handkerchief away. "It's fine. You're only human." "Not for much longer." Winter giggled bitterly. "I'm not human anymore, Naruto. Neither are you." Without thinking, Naruto lurched forward and pulled the trembling girl into his arms. He didn't even consider the ramifications of his actions. He saw her hurting and just moved. Winter went still in his arms, and he tightened them around her waist, crushing her against him. "Don't be sorry about something like this. We'll be monsters together then." "Yeah." Winter buried her head in his shoulder. "Father will kill me if I go back," she murmured, falling back into melancholy again. "He was already looking for an excuse to disown me before this." She gestured wildly with her altered arm, failing to see what he saw. Of course he'll damned. I cut my arm off. I'm sure that won't stop it. He'll call me a cripple and get rid of me anyway. Her eyes flashed when she pulled away, and he watched that lone red orb slip back into blue, once more mirroring its twin. "I won't be a cripple. I won't," she growled. "I refuse to make myself to satisfy his vanity." "Then don't." Nada drove the nail home with a shrug. "You don't owe him anything now." "You're right." A strange smile bloomed on the older Schnee's face. "I don't, do I? I don't care what he wants. Yet there is something I want." Winter leaned in, and Naruto had half an instant to blink before her lips brushed his cheek. His mind shut down on the spot. "Bah." "I'm sorry," Winter whispered, leaning back as he blinked rapidly. "That was foolish of me, perhaps, but I hope this makes my intentions clear." Her arms inched around him when he attempted to move, holding him fast as she could, clinging on for dear life. "May we stay like this?" she murmured. Just a little longer. I don't want to let go. Naruto's brain finally rebooted. Cinder would flail him alive if she saw him like this, wouldn't she? He still couldn't bring himself to say no. Fine. Long as you want. Cinderfall regarded the pool of darkness before her like the pit of poison it was. Slow, measured strides carried her around the lip of the crater, all the while it bubbled and seethed before her, tempting her with its power. Her lip curled in a snarl as she lowered pale golden daggers at it. She'd seen what it had done to Ruby Rose, how it had empowered that slip of a girl, what it was even now doing to little Miss Snee. It had granted them power. Might it do the same for her? There could be no taking it back. Once her decision was made, it would be final. What was done could not be undone. Did she dare? She wasn't so foolish as to simply dive right in as Ruby had done. That way lay madness. Besides, the girl was pure, full of life and light and hope. Her silver eyes had likely afforded her some protection from the corruption influence of the pool, and her exposure had likewise proven brief, preventing her from being altered too drastically. Cinder knew she wasn't pure. Far from it. She craved wealth, fame, power. Her mind was focused, while Ruby's was full of childish things. To be fair, the girl was a child. She supposed that could be forgiven. What could not be forgiven, however, was someone pulling a fast one on her. In a matter of days, she'd lost her place as Salem's favorite, all thanks to an accident. The decision made, she knelt slowly, reared her left arm back, and stabbed it into the pool. She did her limb up to the elbow. Nothing happened. She withdrew it just as quickly and found her skin as it had always been, dripping with black sludge, but still hale and healthy. Odd. From all accounts, the effect would have been immediate, yet she felt nothing. No, wait, she told a lie. Her hand tingled just a little, nothing more. There was no explosion of dark power, no fire in her veins, nothing. She made a second attempt and felt only a curious numbness spreading up to her shoulder as she withdrew her arm from the grim pool. Well, Cinder muttered softly to herself. That was disappointing. Third time's the charm. She dealt her arm in again, slowly this time. With great care, something grabbed her arm and yanked her under. Cinder was ready for it. She could have resisted, could have summoned her blade and fought back, perhaps even clawed her arm free, but she didn't. She surrendered herself to the gravity, sucked in a deep breath of air, squeezed her eyes shut, and pitched forward into the darkness with nary a sound. A minute passed as the surface of that ebony water went still. Another, then another, yet another still. The world held its breath, waiting to see if something would rise from the depths, living or dead. Without warning, a pale hand broke the water surface, stretching towards the shattered moon as if to grasp it. A humanoid shape coated in darkness dragged itself to the shallows, seized the lip of the pool, and dragged itself over the edge. It lay there for a moment, dripping black sludge, chest rising and falling with slow, easy breaths. Cinder exhaled softly and stood frowning down at herself. Her clothes had burned away in the pool, but that was immaterial at her. But clothes could be replaced, power could not, and it was that which had her all but grinning at her reflection. Yes, baleful golden eyes framed by black sclera gazed back at her, framed by a pale face, hair white as ash, and a confident smile. Cinder took a touch of pride in her newfound appearance, turning her hand end over end to inspect them. She rather liked that her eyes had remained the way they were. She would have been upset if they turned red. She turned her hand end over end, regarded them with idle curiosity. She felt stronger, more powerful than she'd ever been before. Destructive impulses warned within her, but her mind remained a steel trap, and she clapped down on them with firm control. Cinderfall was no simple waif to be ruled by any of her emotions. Under Salem's deploy, she had mastered them long ago. Still, she felt some regret. She likely had to hide her face in public now, and while the power was a worthy trade-off, she somehow missed her appearance. As if summoned by the very thought, her world changed. Her skin shimmered, and Cinder found herself gazing back at healthy flesh once more. Golden eyes met hers from the pool, no longer brimming with black, her hair dark as midnight once more. Cinder's smile took on a vicious edge, sharp and cutting like a blade. Well, this was unexpected. She could control it, revert and change at will. She hadn't thought it possible. This had potential, much potential indeed. Laughter echoed long into the night. Previews. A knock settled against the wall. So, a familiar voice called. Am I interrupting anything? Naruto recognized the figure leaning against it. A smile plucked at his face. Yang! Salem did not squeal when she saw her son holding hands with the Schnee. Yes! All right. She squealed a little on the inside. Just a little. She'd been a fool to come back. Naruto? Hey, Weiss, the blonde beamed. I've come to play. Jackie bolted upright from his chair. And just who do you think you are? But Weiss narrowed on him. Weiss thought she saw a glimmer of red slither through their depths. And you must be Jackie Schnee. Winter sends her regards and a message. He paused, considering. I think it was something along the lines of, fuck you. His fist slammed into father's nose. Merlot saw his fear and chuckled softly. It's just a booster shot, my boy. Nothing untoward. You have my word. Naruto hissed. You stick me with that needle, and I'll stick you with a scalpel. Death to the demons. Oh my, an uprising. It's been forever since I crushed one of those. Salem? No. Why is he riding a dragon? Meh, Ruby shrugged. You get used to it. Nora practically drooled. Can I have a turn? End of chapter 7.